In this session, that's usually one of the first questions that I always get is, will this session be recorded and available for me or someone else in my organization that couldn't make it to view afterwards? Absolutely. I just started that recording. And then once the session is wrapped up, you will be sent a follow-up email with a link to the recording and any of the presentation materials as well. And so my name is Brian Peterson. I'm the Director of Business Intelligence globally here at Jet Reports. And thanks for taking the time out of your day to attend the series today. Today's session will be about half an hour long. For those of you that have been attending the rest of the series, that's our pretty standard timeline. I try to keep everything right within that 30-minute limit, and because of this, we typically don't have a chance to for Q&A at the end. And in addition, everybody that's on the call is currently in listen-only mode, meaning that you can hear me. Unfortunately, I can't hear you. We had about 115 people register for the call today, and so as you can imagine, all it takes is a few people to be chatting or background noise, and no one's going to be able to hear me talk. So. Any questions that you have, though, please type them over into the questions panel on the side, and I'll make it a point to follow up with you individually after the session as needed. So just type those in whenever questions come up. So with that being said, what I want to do is just jump right into it. I have a lot of material that I want to cover today. And today's session is on reporting in cubes, the best of both worlds, right? And really what I mean by that is a lot of folks that that have seen prior presentations and where we talk about cubes, or they've gone out and done research on their own. A lot of the context in which cubes are talked about is in the context of dashboards, right? Cubes are fantastic for that. Pivot tables, charts, graphs, things like that. One of the things, however, that isn't talked about a whole lot is using cubes in regular operational reporting and how that can make people's lives much easier and make it much easier to develop some of these types of reports. Right. Now, before we get into all of these details, we're going to spend the majority of the session showing examples of this, right? That's one of the main keys of this webinar, the BI Advantage webinar series, is to show the practical business application of a lot of these BI topics. So we're going to spend the vast majority of the time in Excel creating a couple different reports and showing you what it looks like, what the process looks like, and then tying everything together with, since we use cubes, building a report that encompasses all of these things was pretty easy, right? So, but a few things that I want to do to level set. Oh, of course, here's the normal "Who are we?" slide, right? So we've been around. For those of you that are new to the webinar series, we've been around for for about 13 years now, primarily in the dynamic space. We've got 100,000 users globally. And I should have talked about this slide a moment ago before I jumped right into the presentation topic. So there you go. That's who Jet Reports is. But getting back on track as far as the topic is concerned, right? One question I oftentimes get asked, and it's important just to speak to this for a moment, is reporting versus dashboarding. Everybody can have their own definition of this. I'm not saying that my definition is necessarily the only one out there, because you can Google this and get hundreds of thousands of results. But for the purposes of how we're going to be looking at things today, right, and differentiating between reports and dashboards, reports, right, and I oftentimes hear people confusing the two, right? They'll mention a dashboard when they're really talking about a report, or they'll call it a report when they're talking about more of a dashboard, and they are really two separate and distinct things, right? There are some folks as well that refer to dashboards as visual reports, right? But just to kind of talk about some of the main details, because we're going to focus on the ones on the left, on the reporting side of things today. Reporting tends to focus more on detailed information, right? You'll see a lot of details around, document levels, and one of the things too that I'll mention is reports are typically, not always, right, but typically multiple pages long. Or they can be, right? If it's 50 pages long, it is not a dashboard, right? Dashboards are very summary level, concise information, and typically very visual, right? Whereas reports are pretty freeform, meaning that I have the ability to come into one particular cell or place in the report, and I can put in one thing like the time it was run, and I want to double underline that and italicize that one thing, right? So with reports, you tend to have a lot of control in a freeform manner as far as the structure and the layout of the report, right? Dashboards focus primarily on visual information. And again, a lot of times reports are very static in their presentation, right? Income statements, balance sheets, AR summary reports, things like that. You can run them, you can change the filters, but the overall look and feel typically stays the same in a lot of cases. Dashboards a lot of times are used to quickly change the way that you're looking at information, right? It's a very visual way to consume large amounts of information. Now let me show you an example of what some of these look like, right? Reports versus dashboards. Here is one example of something that is a report. This report could be 173 pages long, and we have very detailed information. For every customer, we have every single document that's outstanding with the posting date and the document number and the due date, and then the bucket that it falls into as far as the aging is concerned and things like that. So this is an example, right, of one of many of what a report looks like in its traditional form. Versus, this is an example of what a dashboard looks like, right? We're not looking at document level information here. I'm not looking at document SC100593 and what the due date of that document is. I'm looking at sales for my organization every month over the course of the past 3 years. This could be hundreds of thousands of invoices aggregated into something where I can visually look at it and make some sense. Now, one of the things that I'll get asked too is, well, you know, what's more important for me as an organization to focus on, reports or dashboards, right? And the answer is really, I mean, they're not. A lot of times I get the impression that people think that reports and dashboards are mutually exclusive, right? Meaning, do I have reports or do I have dashboards? And it's really more of a matter of the questions that people are looking to answer, right? Every time that someone opens up a dashboard or a report, they're looking to answer a question of some kind, or to analyze something that's going to help them make a decision, right? Drives decision making. Sometimes dashboards are very good because I can quickly see, oh, we have a dip in sales right here. What's going on? Is there a particular reason for this? I also noticed that about half of my sales are coming from the US. Now, I didn't have to look at 200,000 invoices to determine that. That's the whole point of dashboards. But if I want to know which customers and specifically which documents are most overdue, a report is a much better medium for that. So we talk about dashboards all the time with cubes. We're not going to talk about that today or show any examples because the topic of today's session is primarily on building reports, right? So reporting in cubes. We covered the reporting piece. One of the things that I want to talk about for some level setting, what are cubes, right? In short, cubes, right, OLAP cubes, they live in a special kind of SQL database. It's called an analysis services database. And all that means is that it's a special kind of SQL database where the data is structured differently than we're used to in what's called a relational database, right? Relational database being NAV or GP, tables, fields, things like that. One of the main benefits for business users of OLAP cubes, and OLAP cubes have been around for a long time, right, is that the data is pre-calculated. That makes it very fast. And also the relationships between everything are predefined, right? The users have to do less thinking about, how do I link the customer table to the transaction table, to the date table, to the item table, to get the information I want, and allows them to use all of the information in more of a predefined manner. And really, OLAP cubes, from a client perspective, from a business user perspective, they're there for ease of use and for speed. And so, just to cover some examples of what a cube looks like and how it kind of works, right? Cubes are made up of a few different things. We have what we call dimensions, right? Not to be confused with dimensions that may exist in your ERP system, like a global dimension or something like that. In a cube, a dimension is any way that we can slice or dice information. So here are some of the dimensions I'm looking at are products, customers, years, things like that. And then we have measures. Right? So these are typically calculated values, right? I have a sales measure and a profit measure, then I have a profit percentage measure, and all of the business metrics that I want. So from the context of a report, the measures are usually the stuff that sits in the middle. Dimensions are typically things that sit around, right? Columns or rows, things like that. And everything in the middle is typically measures. But the great thing about cubes is that everything is related. So for example, I have my country, in this case, US. Inside of that, I can then have another level for city, right? All of my cities in that country. And then inside of that, I have all of my different customers that are in each city. So it makes it very easy for me as a business user to go from a high level to a very low level really quickly, again, without having to deal with the relationships between all of these things, or which table in the ERP system does this live in, right? All of this is predefined in the cube. Same thing over here as far as dates are concerned, right? If I want to look at it on the year as a whole, or by quarter, or by month, or by week, or by day, or whatever else, all of that information is predefined. We work with a lot of clients who have very complex calendars, right? We have one client we worked with just recently where they had 4 different calendars in use in their organization. Right? The finance team had just started using a fiscal calendar starting July 1st. The sales team used a regular calendar starting January 1st. The manufacturing side used a 445, and there was their marketing team used something else, I think. And so the whys around that were left out. That was their business process. And as you can imagine, reporting was a big pain point for them because everybody had to know all of these different dates, right? Again, the cubes made that easy because they could just drag in the marketing calendar or drag in the manufacturing calendar and have everything look the way that they needed it to, right? The way that the business users needed it to, without having to pull out their little cheat sheet on the side of their monitor that showed all of the, the calendar periods as a refresher. So again, the whole idea behind cubes is it makes it very easy for us to structure the data, right? And we can add hierarchies as we see here. Now, the topic of today's session being reporting in cubes, why these work really well together, right? So we talked about reporting with the need for that free-form reporting, again, looking at detailed information. It's more data focused, less visual focused, and how the cubes play into this from a business user perspective. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, and for the rest of today's session, is really I'm going to build a couple reports. And you might be thinking, well, we've got 15 minutes. How is he going to build a couple reports? And I'm going to build a couple. Time might be a little tight. I'm going to try to wrap up right at 11:30. But I want to go in and show you and explain to you what it looks like and how, as a business user, creating a report off of a cube makes my life so much easier than having to report off of a relational database where I have to know date ranges and my report has to be much more complex, right? So with that being said, let's get started. I've got 15 minutes and I'm gonna go ahead and just open up Excel. So as many of you know, Jet Enterprise, we have an Excel add-in that's used as our report writing tool. Right? There are a lot of different places we can pull data from. In this case, for today's session, I'm going to pull the data straight out of the cubes. And the first thing that I'm going to do, right, for today, I'm going to create 2 different types of reports. I'm going to create a sales report that's showing profitability by customers, things like that. I'm also going to, after that, build a financial statement. So a lot of times people don't realize how easy it can be to build financial statements using cubes. Because a lot of times when people use cubes, they want to use the pivot table. Pivot tables are fantastic. They're really easy, but they don't necessarily lend themselves best to creating board-ready financial statements because, let's face it, a lot of times we're not going to get the data in the pivot in the format that we want for a financial statement in a pivot table. It's just not really going to happen. Right? And so that's where we can still use all of the flexibility and speed of the cubes in more of a reporting environment, right? Without having to rely on pivot tables. So as far as the sales report's concerned, let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to do everything just using our browser for this. So I'm going to click my browser. Here I have all of my different cubes. This is going to be a sales report. And here we have all of our measures. Remember, all the measures are just the numeric values. And then I have all of my dimensions. So all the ways that I can add context to my measures. So let's say that I want to create a list of customers, first and foremost. I can just drag this out. I can drop it somewhere on my canvas. And guess what? I now have a list of customers. Over the next few minutes, we're going to expand this, and this is going to go from being something that's just this to something that I think looks really nice and adds a lot of value and makes it easy for me as a business user to see which customers are profitable, which salespeople are profitable, which ones aren't, and things like that, and where some decisions might need to be made. So for the customer, I want to see some information. Just a big list of customers doesn't really help me that much. So I'm going to come in here and I want to add in some measures. So I want to see my sales amount. I'll just drag this and drop it in here. I want to see my sales amount last year, right? Again, this is one of the nice things. As a business user, I don't have to worry about date ranges for last year. All of this is going to be handled by the cubes. And let me also take a look here at profit. I'm going to leave some column spacing here because I'm going to add some formatting to make this look nice. And let's say that I also want to look at my profit percentage. So I can drag this in and my profit percentage last year. I'm going to drag this in and there we go. So this in and of itself gives me a lot of information. This doesn't look very pretty, let's be honest, right? So we're going to spend a minute and clean some of this stuff up. Right, we can rename any of these columns. I'll just call this one customer. I'm going to add a date filter of some kind for year. Let's say that I want to look at everything for 2018 or 2017, doesn't really matter. So I can just plug in the year up here. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to change my function, right? Because right now it's looking at everything for all time. And I'm going to add a filter, YEAR, for year. And again, I'm just using Excel functionality, and I'm going to point it over to this particular column right here. Right? So now I have sales amounts for 2017, sales amounts for last year. Makes sense? Let me come in here and insert another column. So let's say that I want to do a variance. Makes sense? So sales amount for the current year minus last year. This is also something, the variance could have been added to the cube. But I wanted to leave it out specifically so I can show you we can use Excel functionality. Anything that I want to do, right? Any kind of Excel functions. This is a simple one, just kind of this column minus that column. But we have full control using Excel to make this stuff look however I want. And I can just copy this guy over here. I can copy this guy, oops, over here. These fits at the top, these are automatically going to size these columns for me once I run the report. That way, if there's some month where there's a huge number of sales, it doesn't look like this, right, where the numbers are all squished down into these little pound signs. It'll automatically size it for me. And as far as everything is concerned, everything else I'm going to do with this report, honestly, is just going to be formatting. So I'm going to make this look a little bit nicer. All of these, I'm going to go ahead and format as numbers. These are all percentages. I want to put this out to a decimal place. Let's make some of this information look a little bit nicer so I can go ahead and add some formatting in here. And you might think, okay, I get it. It's Excel formatting. Why is he spending so much time on this? And the reason is because this is actually something that, again, from a business user perspective, makes a big difference, right? I could have left it looking all plain and just saying, and then at the end, you could just go in and do all the formatting you want, but which is true. But really, what I want to show you is how we can make these reports actually look very nice and very visually appealing in a short amount of time. For those of you that have been on any of my webinars in the past, I'm a very no smoke and mirrors guy, so I don't do the whole, and if you just did some more steps I'm not going to show you, just trust me, everything's going to look great. So, so what do I have here, right? I've been dragging things in. I added in my customers and my sales amounts for a certain year, but what does this give us, right? If I come up here and if I click the report button to refresh this thing, I get every single customer that had sales in 2017 and an overall look of what these particular sales are, right? That's a lot of information. And the database that we're pulling from, I mean, this is quite a few 100,000 transactions that it's aggregating. Again, one of the benefits of cubes, that pulling the data is very, very fast as compared to going back to the source system and trying to sum up lots and lots of transactions. In addition, a lot of these other things like profits. As a business user, I didn't have to go in and think, So how do I want to calculate profit? That has already been predefined in the cube, and as an organization, we've agreed that the profit calculation and the way the profit is calculated is correct, right? I don't have to go and pull 15 different things in and subtract this and divide this and add this kind of adjustment, right? All of that has been done in the background. Same thing with last year. I don't have to come in here and specify a different date. We have a measure that says, well, I'm looking at 2017, and over here, I want to look at the same number for last year. Again, the cube automatically calculates that, making my life as a business user much easier. Now, there are two different ways that I want to actually add some context to this. And one of them is I want, if I look at that again, I want to have some more visual in here. Numbers are great, but I want to know really who's selling more or less without having to glance through and be like, okay, these people sold less and these people sold less or bought less and these people bought less, right? I want some sort of a visual indication here. And again, I can come in here, I can just use Excel. I'm going to highlight these two cells right here, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to go ahead and add some conditional formatting to this, right? Actually, before I do this, I'll add a totaling column, right? So this is just a regular old sum function right here in Excel. I'm just going to copy this over. This is just going to be a variance, and really, there we go. Right? So this is just going to total everything up for me. I'll apply my, I'll go ahead and apply my, my formatting and things like that in here as well, so that everything looks nice. But in the end, really what I'm doing is I'm just coming in here and adding some totals. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some conditional formatting. So again, everything I'm doing is Excel. I went in and did some Jet stuff in the beginning, but now the rest of it is just kind of cleaning this particular report up. And here I'm just going to add an icon set, right? So up arrow, down arrow lets me know what things are looking like. And I can come in here and actually change this as well. So I can say if the number is basically greater than, if it's above 0, so if our sales grew, then make it green. Otherwise, if the sales didn't grow, then make it red, essentially. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to refresh this report again, and now I have a visual indicator. So as a business user, I can glance at this and I know right off the bat which customers have sales and profitability that have gone down. Now, one more thing that I want to add, right, and a lot of times something that people don't oftentimes attribute with cubes or the ability to do so, is I want to break this out by salesperson, right? This is every customer all time. I want to break this out by salesperson. Now, how can I do this? I'm just going to come right in here. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go to my browser. I'm going to come down here to my salesperson, and I want to list out my salespeople across sheets. So I'm just going to drag out my salesperson on document. And once again, I'll drop it in here somewhere. This is my salesperson. And I'm just going to do one more thing. I'm just going to add another filter for this function that's listing out all my sales or all my customers. And I'm going to say, only show me things where the salesperson code is this guy over here, right? So I know I'm going through this kind of fast. This is not meant necessarily as a training, but more of these are the types of things you can do in Excel. As you can see, I'm not doing anything necessarily super complicated or any programming. I'm just kind of dragging the things out that I want and then applying formatting as needed. And then right in here, if I go ahead and run the report, so I drag this out saying that I want to create a different salesperson on each sheet. Right now, what I get is you'll see across the bottom that it's actually expanded, and now I have every single salesperson listed out. So now this is kind of an overview of sales by salesperson. So I can see perfect. It looks like Annette's doing well, Bart's doing well, John. Wow, John's numbers are kind of tanking because last year he'd sold 2.4 million. Now he sold 2.1. Maybe something for me to look into, right? So again, using the functionality and the flexibility of cubes along with the reporting functionality that comes with Jet. Very powerful, very easy to create reports that look like this that can then be published and distributed across the organization. So So again, like I mentioned, I know I went through that kind of fast. I'm just trying to build these 2 reports in about that 15-minute time frame that I had. So all of this is recorded. You'll be able to come back and take a look at it. Whenever you like. But one more thing that I want to build, which I promised, is I want to build out a financial statement of some kind. Right? So, and I want to do that in the next 6 minutes. Which I think is totally doable, because again, cubes make this whole thing easy. So let me go ahead and open up one new Excel window. And one of the things that I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go and take an example of a financial statement that exists. I'll just use NAV in this example. And let me go ahead and go to my account schedules. We'll do an income statement. That sounds good. So here's my income statement. I'm just going to come in here and I'll show you how we can build something out. Right? There we go. There's an example of what my financial statement will look like. Expand this out a little bit. And let me get rid of some of the stuff I don't need. I don't care about this. I don't care about this. This is all nav stuff that I don't really need. What I do care about are the names, the totalings, and we'll say that just because I want to be fancy, I'm going to come in here and I am going to add in a nice little logo. Go Jet Reports. Now, as far as this is concerned, some of the things that I want to list out are some of the ways that I want this to look, right? So here's a basic structure of a financial statement, but how do I get the information in here that I want? Well, I'll show you. One of the first things I'll do, right, I can put in some date or some month that I want to use. So I'll say that I want to look at October of 2017. I'll show you how it's easy for us to change this as well. Right, prior year, I want to see a variance, and I want to see a variance percent. So one of the things that I will do here is this. I'm going to come in and I'm going to use Jet to create this function. And once again, I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to get a cube value. This is just a way for us to get a number out of our cubes. I'm going to go to my finance cube in this case. And I want to go ahead and get my amount. And then I have some filters, right? My filters being, I want to filter on a month and I want to filter on some GL accounts. We could add as many other filters as we want for global dimensions, customers, whatever it may be. In this case, I'm going to filter on month. I'll come right up here to the top. And I can actually lock that down all the way. And then I also want to filter on my GL account numbers, right? Which are going to be this range right over here that were defined in my chart of accounts. In this case, right, revenue accounts, negative balance, I can go ahead and flip the sign easily. I'll just put a little minus right up here. And then I can just copy this over, right, as you'll see. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the measure that I'm using. So that way I don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? I want to get my amount last year. I want to get my variance. So guess what? We have a measure for that. Variance. And right over here, I want to get my variance percent. Now, the beautiful thing about Jet and the way that everything is structured here, right, is that I can come in and do all of my formatting and everything else one time, and then I can come in and I can basically make this look however I want, right? And I can just copy this information down. So I can come in here if we make this a little bit bigger, right? Now I'm getting into expenses, so I don't want to reverse the sign as far as how these look. So I'll just take off these minuses, and then after that, oops, I'll take this one off too. And then after that, for the most part, I'll be in the clear as far as everything else. I'll go ahead and just do this. I'll copy some of these guys down. And I mean, a minute ago, you might have thought, how is he going to finish this in the next minute? And I can just copy all this information down to net operating income. Here, I'll get all of my other expenses. I don't think we have a whole lot of transactional information in there. Right there, and there. And then, everything else is really just a matter of making this stuff look pretty, right? So there is my financial statement. I have 1 minute to spare as far as as far as timing goes. So I can just bold everything, underline everything, and you guys get the idea as far as how everything looks. One of the nice things too is that this is a one-time setup, right? I don't have to go and recreate this each and every single time that I want to run this particular report or this particular financial statement. I'll stop doing the formatting just for the sake of time. I can come in here and I can change this to September. My numbers refresh instantly, right? Say that I want to look at it for 2018 August. My numbers refresh instantly, right? And then the last thing that I'll do from a formatting perspective is just clean this up a little bit, and then I can go ahead and just refresh this so you'll see what the report itself looks like. So there we go. I had 6 minutes. I created an income statement off of the cubes. And again, why did the cubes make this so easy? The cubes made this so easy because all of this information, right, the months, the prior year, the variances, these are all calculated already. As a business user, I don't have to spend time figuring out how the data works, right? It's the calculations and things like that are there. I can focus the time on building the report and then analyzing the information in the manner in which I'd want to see it. So again, just as a recap of the topic that we covered today, we went through and it was really reporting in cubes, how those two fit together really well. And it's the data structure of the cubes and the speed of the cubes coupled with the ability to for us to use the JET tools to have that free-form reporting and just drag things out and put them where we want and apply filters as necessary. And then everything else, I mean, I probably spent a third of the session today just doing Excel formatting, right? Bold this, underline this, make it look pretty, right? So the JET stuff is relatively easy, as you saw. So I'm keeping to my promise. I don't want to keep anybody too late because I know many of you have meetings after this. I really appreciate the time that you spent today. Again, this whole session was recorded. An email will go out letting you know how you or anybody else in your organization can access that. Any questions that you do have, I see a couple have come in, please type that over, those over in the questions pane. I get an email after the session ends of what all those questions are, and I'll follow up with you. And we do hope to see you for our next session, December 8th, about web-based reports, right? How web-based reporting provides insight from anywhere 24/7. I know you're thinking, great, thanks JET Reports. Now I can work 24 hours a day. 24/7 if you want it, we'll put it that way. And we're gonna talk about dashboards, and we are also going to talk about some report functionality as far as publishing to the web. It'll be a sneak preview that many people have not seen yet of some really great functionality we'll be releasing early next year. So I'll be showcasing that as well. So definitely attend the session next month. Any questions you have, please be sure to send them in. My email address is also at the bottom. And with that being said, I wish you all a good week. And thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.